Hi, I'm Jillian and welcome to the show. I offer spiritual growth for the rebel soul, guiding you through the labyrinth of your own ascension path. This show is for the rebel souls that challenge the status quo, those that crave authenticity in every single aspect of their lives, that desire to embrace their uniqueness, follow their passions, connect to their soul, and live according to who they truly are, even if that means having the courage to go against the grain or the norms of society. If that's you, my spiritual soul seeker, rebel warrior, then this is the place for you. On this podcast, we speak about everything from spirituality, sexuality, conscious relationships, business, and literally everything in between. So if that's your jam, then stay tuned. And go on, be a rebel and subscribe. You know you want to. In this episode, we're going to talk about why age 4 is the key to healing your inner child. Now, if you've ever done any inner child work, or if you're just curious about it, you might start to notice that when you go into this work, age 4 keeps coming up again and again. Now, I noticed that with my own healing journey as well as my clients, because I take my clients through a lot of inner child healing. Because we're so multifaceted. It doesn't just come from past lives. It doesn't just come from our ancestral line. It doesn't just come from society. It comes from our childhood. Now, this age 4 kept on coming up with, again, my journey and my client's journey. And I really pondered this for a while. And I'm like, why is it age 4 that keeps coming up? You know, why do so many memories, wounds, and patterns trace back to that specific age, like that specific time in our lives? You know, so stick with me, because by the end of this episode, you're not just going to understand the significance of this age, but you're also going to learn how to connect with and heal your own 4-year-old self. So let's just take it back to science, right? Let's start with the developmental part of science. You know, like at age 4, we're in a critical stage of growth, you know, emotionally, mentally, and even spiritually. You know, if you've got a 4-year-old, or if you've got a friend or family member that's got a 4-year-old, you really start to notice a shift and a difference from when they're like a toddler to them becoming like a fully fledged child, if that makes sense. You know, I have a friend whose daughter is 4 going on 5, and it's that age now where, you know, she's really turning into like her own human, her own character. You know, her language is getting there. You know, there's so many shifts that happen around that key age, that this is kind of where I started to go down a rabbit hole of understanding why this age is such a pivotal point for our inner child healing, and why so much comes up to be healed around this age. So if we look at that age, you know, like around 4 years old, like this is a time when, you know, kids begin to start interpreting their environment, you know, often like in black and white terms, right? Like they don't have the level of consciousness that we do as an adult. So a lot of what they're experiencing or interpreting, they're internalizing, right? They're just asking questions like, am I lovable? Am I safe? Can I trust these people? Can I trust the world? Like it really is that kind of black and white, because they've got no other extensive repertoire, because they're only 4. They've had 4 years of living, right? And, you know, at that age as well, like our kids are really learning to regulate their emotions, right? But they still obviously rely so heavily on their parents or their caregivers for validation and safety, right? So, you know, if their emotions, and you know, 4-year-olds, think about that, they have big emotions, right? They're trying to understand them, they're trying to regulate them, but they cry, you know, they still have needs. But ultimately, if those big emotions are somehow dismissed or punished, like at this age, they might start to internalize that shame, and then that might carry into adulthood, right? So, you know, by this age, the brain is starting to develop the ability to hold on to long-term memories. So any experiences that we have at this age, like, can just linger in our unconscious. So what happens is they create imprints and shape how we navigate our relationships, how we navigate boundaries, and ultimately, like, our level of self-worth later in life, because our memory starts to become long-term at this age. So, even look at 4-year-olds and look at the level of creativity that they have, right? They live in a world of creativity, exploration, and magic. I only have to go into my friend's house with her little girl, and she is like building forts and, wanting to play all these things. And like, their imagination is wild. Like, I have a great imagination. I'm very creative, but like, I can't even keep up with this, right? But it's so beautiful, and it's so magical is the only word that I can describe it as. But because like their imagination is so heightened at this age, it really also, like, I believe, makes them so vulnerable to interpreting situations in ways that aren't always true or accurate, right? Like, again, they internalize everything. Like, kids are wired for connection, belonging, and love, and their whole world is their general vicinity, right? Their whole world is their home, their family, like, generally as a 4-year-old, their friends, like, that's their nursery. They don't really have much scope outside of that. So, they internalize a lot of these things. Like, if there's anything happening in their world, they will internalize that. So, for instance, if a parent is stressed or if they're distant, which in today's world, right, in today's society, that is just a given, right? That is a given. I know as a parent, it's so hard to be fully present 100% of the time for your children, for all of their needs. But it is something that we need to start becoming a little bit more conscious of, because like, this really does affect our kids. And, if that's happening, your 4-year-old might think, I must have done something wrong. If they're experiencing a perceived threat of where their parent or their caregiver isn't giving them the attention, isn't responding to their emotional needs, feels distant, then they're going to think it's because of them, right? They're not going to think, oh, daddy's stressed at work, or, mummy's got like all this shopping to do, or whatever it is. That was very sexist, so I apologize for that. But you get my drift, right? And they internalize it with, it must be me, right? I must be the problem, because they can't think of anything outside of that, because their world isn't anything outside of that. They can't comprehend that. So they internalize it and think the problem is them, right? So that's where we start to get these challenges, and a lot of the wounds stem from this age, because these beliefs are started to be created and started to be formed at this age, and those are the beliefs that then we carry into adulthood, that then block us or keep us stuck or keep us in fear from truly like living our purpose, or from attracting the right relationships, or from stepping into the unknown and following our dreams. Like, it can really impact us in so many ways. So one of the other reasons I think that age 4 has become so significant in my work is because it falls into Erik Erikson's psychosocial stage called initiative versus guilt. Now, after doing a bit of research, I found that this is the phase where children want to assert their independence, right? And they want to take initiative. Again, look at your 4-year-olds, look at any 4-year-olds around you, and you get what I'm saying here. They're exploring who they are, they're pushing the boundaries of what they can do. But here's the kicker, right? Like, if they're criticized, if they're like overly controlled, if they're not given a safe space to experiment and fail, what do? They internalize that. They internalize the guilt. They internalize the self-doubt. So just have a think about it now. Like, going back to that time when you were 4, wherever you were at that point, whoever you were with, were you allowed to like express yourself freely at that age? Did you feel safe exploring your creativity? Did you feel safe to explore your independence? Or were you shamed for being too much, too loud, too messy, for things that you were saying? All of these things have a real impact at that age for us, and I get it, for the most part, unless there was some conscious neglect or abuse. For the most part, our parents or caregivers, did the best that they could based on their own upbringing, right? Because this is cyclical, guys. This is very cyclical. And as parents, maybe new parents, especially back in the day, potentially when our parents were parents, they didn't have access to all the information that we have now, right? So for the most part, they were probably dealing with their own stress, their own childhood trauma. They and as a kid, you might have internalized the messages that your needs or emotions weren't wanted, or they were a burden, and these are the wounds I always see. I always see come up with people that manifest as people pleasing, perfectionism, or fear of failure in adulthood. Like, that is always the case, right? And again, you think about that, all of those things, perfectionism, overextending yourself, fear of failure, what is that going to stop you doing? It's going to stop you from taking the leaps that you need to fully realize your potential. You're going to stay stuck. You're going to stay in the familiar. You're not going to grow or extend yourself into places that you're meant to truly fulfill like your soul's mission here, right? Because you're just going to be blocked by these unconscious beliefs that have been created from when you were 4. And I guess here's where it lands, right? Here's where it lands to today, right? Let's talk about how all of these things show up in your life today, because they do. Let's be honest, they do, right? So here are a couple of common signs that I often see with my clients that your inner 4-year-old is asking for healing. So if you feel paralyzed by your level of perfectionism, or a fear of failure, a fear of getting it wrong, a fear of making mistakes, that could have been rooted in a time where you were maybe scolded, or you weren't appreciated, or you were told to do it a different way when you were trying something new at that age. Like, I know for me, there was a time where I was a kid, and this is so funny, it's so random, but it's a thing. And this is the reason that I don't iron. I don't iron any of my clothes, guys. Disclaimer, like, I don't need to. My clothes they just don't need ironed. But when I was a kid, my mom was showing me how to iron. And I remember I tried it. This is like a very vivid memory that I have. I was trying to iron, and she kind of grabbed the iron off me and was like, no, you do it this way. And from that experience, I remember my whole self recoiling and saying to myself, well, I'll never fucking do this again. I obviously didn't swear because I was a kid. But like, that was the feeling. It was like I wasn't good enough to do that, or I wasn't good at it. So I just didn't do it. So I was like, I'm just never going to iron again. And it really, really put me off ironing. So I just never done it again. Thankfully, again, I don't wear like loads of shirts that I have to iron them, because that hasn't hindered me in such a big way. But you get my drift. If there was something more serious, how that could really impact you from doing things, or doing new things, or trying new things, because you're so afraid to be scolded, or told that wasn't good enough, or told that it was wrong. And then another thing, if your emotions or your needs were dismissed at that age, then you may have learned to prioritize other people to gain the approval or the love, right? Like, this is key people pleasing tendencies. Like, when we learn that our emotions aren't gonna be like, it's like we learn that they're not valid, we try and overextend ourselves from other people to get that love. So doing things for them, saying yes to things, because we feel like if our needs are never going to get met, so we try and meet the needs of others in order to get love. Again, it's so maladaptive, it's so unconscious. But just have a think, if this is a pattern that keeps coming out in your life, just notice that this could be the reason why. Another big one is second guessing yourself. Like, do you have a lot of self-doubt? Do you feel guilt? Do you second guess yourself? And this could stem from a time where your independence was discouraged, or your independence was criticized, or something that you believed to be true, or maybe you spoke of, maybe you said something was true and it was completely dismissed. Like, you're going to start to internalize like this self-doubt that your own intuition or your own truth or your own voice, or what you wanted to do just wasn't, like, it's not valid or it's not right. And this is a big thing. This is a big block to our intuition, in fact, and it was something that I definitely had worked through. Another sign that you could have inner child wounds from this age is being overly defensive or crushed by any feedback that maybe wasn't, like, it was maybe more on the criticism side, you know, like that real strong reaction to criticism. Like, I know this was a thing for me, like back in the day when I was moving through the world of corporate. I was very lucky in a way that I excelled at that job that I had. When I was in recruitment, I obviously did very well, but I was a workaholic. Like, my self-worth was all in being good at my job. And, you know, and it wasn't till many, many years later that when I actually built my own business that I experienced criticism. And that was something that I really had to heal. I really had to move through, because, you know, there might have been times, if you have this too, where as a child you were made to feel not enough, right? And that's, again, that could be so unconscious. That could be our parents are busy, our parents are, you know, dealing with another child, our parents, you know, have their own issues. Like, I mean, there's so many factors that could make a child feel like they're not enough, right? And this is one of them. And then another sign that I've noticed is if your creativity, if your joy, your imagination, your playfulness was stifled at this age 4, then you're probably going to struggle to tap into that, like, that intuitive joy and magic and creativity as an adult. So if any of these resonate, then your own 4-year-old might be calling for your attention. So that's all well and said, right? But it's like, how do you actually begin healing the journey with your 4-year-old? Now, obviously, there's something that I do in depth with my clients, so you can obviously book in a healing session with me. But here's some things I just want to be able to give you to get started, right? You can reconnect with your 4-year-old anytime. You can reconnect with any age, your inner teenager, whatever it is. So I just want you to close your eyes and imagine yourself at that age, at age 4, because that's what we're talking about. Just close your eyes and imagine yourself at that age now. What do you love to do? What brought you joy? How did you feel safe and seen? And I just want you to try and picture a memory from that time and just notice what emotions arise. And just notice those emotions, and I just want you to validate those emotions, because there's probably a time where those emotions were never validated. So I just want you to speak to your inner child now, as if you're their loving parent, and you can say whatever feels intuitive to say to them, whatever they need to hear. Perhaps it's okay to feel scared. You don't have to be perfect to be loved. You're safe with me now. Sometimes it was the things that were never said that create these blocks or these patterns or these wounds that we struggle with in our adult life, and that impact every single part of our life, from our relationships to our career to our spiritual growth to our money. All of these can stem from never really being heard or never really being validated, never really being seen or understood. And this is a whole part of the inner child healing that we can start to do now as an adult, is to validate those feelings and those emotions that were never were able to be expressed, or were never really truly seen or being made to feel safe at that time. And now once you've said what you needed to say to this 4-year-old part of yourself, some of the most powerful ways that you can heal yourself is through play. Just think of what you love to do as a 4-year-old, what 4-year-olds love to do. What could you do now that your 4-year-old loved to do or would love to do now? Like, would it be painting, dancing, listening to music, getting your hands dirty, building something with your hands? Just think about what's something that you could do and just like focus on the joy of doing whatever that is. Kids love creativity. Kids love to play. Kids love to be in that joy frequency. And when we can tap into that as an adult, we can reconnect with those parts of ourselves. So just think about what you can do at some point. And this is going to get you closer to that part of yourself. It's going to reconnect you to that 4-year-old. And I also want you to know that you can rewrite the story. I also want you to know that you can take a memory from this age 4. Maybe this memory where you felt hurt or you felt dismissed some way. Just imagine yourself going back as your adult self now, as the highest version of you, and just comforting your younger self in that moment. Just give them whatever it was that they needed at the time. Whether it's a hug, whether it's reassurance, whether it's love or safety. And you can just visualize that. You can just feel that. You can tap into the different timelines at any point when you create stillness and when you create intention. And you can ask them, or you can journal and ask this 4-year-old self, what do you need from me today? And just allow your pen to write the answers. Just allow them to guide you and your healing. Because probably what you needed back then is also what you need now. And that might be as simple as a hug. That might be as simple as physical touch. That might be as simple as being told that you've got this, that you're safe. These are things that you can start to do now to connect with this inner 4-year-old. And I want to share a quick personal story. You know, as I said, this 4-year-old part of me has come up many, many times in my own inner child healing journey. And one specific memory was when I expressed my truth of something that had happened, something that didn't feel good for me. And I expressed that to my parents. And because there was no mental resolution, because I wasn't told or no action seemed to be taken for my protection, I felt like nothing had been done about it. I felt that my needs weren't valid. I felt I wasn't listened to, I wasn't heard, and I wasn't safe. And it led me to question my own truth and my own intuition. And so self-doubt crept in. Well, did what I experienced, did that even happen? Maybe it didn't happen because my parents didn't do anything about it, so they mustn't have thought it was a big issue. So you start to question everything, and you internalize that. And obviously how that presented itself to me as an adult was not expressing my truth, suppressing all of my emotions, suppressing when something felt hard or didn't feel good. I would keep quiet or put a brave face on. And I would be so terrified to express it because I never felt that my needs would be met. I never felt that expressing my truth, that good things were going to come from that. And that all stemmed from my 4-year-old. And you can imagine how many times that got me into precarious situations, right? Especially in relationships. You know? And there's parts like all that needed to be had in those moments where I hear you, I see you, we're going to take care of it. All I needed was communication. All I needed was a hug. All I needed to know that I was safe and protected, and I got none of those. And you might have a very similar experience. So, to conclude today's episode, age 4 is more than just a number. It's honestly the gateway to understanding and healing so many of our core beliefs, so many emotions, so many patterns that shape who we actually are today. So by reconnecting to your 4-year-old self, you're able to reclaim these parts of yourself. You're able to start reclaiming your joy, reclaiming your confidence, reclaiming your truth, reclaiming your self-worth. So if you can start to just do those practices today, just start to see things shift. And if you want to go a little bit deeper and you want to feel supported in your journey, then you can always book a session with me. So I just want to thank you for joining this episode. And if this resonated with you, I'd love to hear about it. You can send me a message on Instagram at Gillian Kane Connection. Or you can share this episode with someone who might benefit from it. And until next time, trust your soul, honor your journey, and nurture that inner child within you. Sending you so much love. Until next time.